Hello everybody, my name is Andy Huynh and today we're going to be discussing Inez Beverly Prosser. Well, who is Inez Beverly Prosser? As we learned in class, Margaret Floyd Washburn was the first woman to get a PhD in psychology. Additionally, Frances Cecile Sumner was the first African American to get a degree in psychology. With those information combined, you might guess that Inez Beverly Prosser was actually the first African American woman to get a PhD in psychology. This is a picture of her here. Prosser was dedicated to what I believe is one of the most important fields of psychology, and that is education psychology. So just to get some background information on Inez Beverly Prosser, she was born on December 10th, 1895. I say 1895, but in actuality, historians are quite unsure of the exact year she was born. And 1895, that was over a century ago. And just to put things into perspective, 1895 is approximately 30 years after the Civil War and over 50 years before the Civil Rights era. Prosser was born in a city known as Yoakum, a little town located in south-central Texas. However, when she was young, her parents moved the family around a lot. She wasn't born into the best conditions. Her father was a waiter and her mother was a housewife, actually. And she was actually the first daughter of 11 children. Since her mother wasn't always around, she would be the one in charge of her siblings. From a very young age, Prosser had a lifelong love for education. When she graduated high school, she was actually valedictorian of her grade. And something actually pretty interesting is that her parents only had enough money to send one child to college, and they wanted to send her brother Leon. However, Leon actually believed that the money should go to his sister instead, and he was able to convince his parents to pay for Inez's education, and as we can see, eventually pays off. Once Prosser left her high school, she went to Prairie View A&M. There, she pursued her dream of education and obtained a 2-year certificate in teaching in 1912. At the time, Prosser taught at a lot of black middle and high schools around the city of Austin. She focused mainly on the area of English. However, Prosser wanted to continue her education and went to Samuel Huston College. There, she was able to obtain a bachelor's in education in 1926. However, once again, this was not enough for Prosser, and she wanted to pursue her master's in education. Though at the time, due to segregated colleges in the state of Texas, Prosser had to leave to the University of Colorado to complete her master's in education. For her thesis, Prosser wrote a paper called The Comparative Reliability of Objective Tests in English Grammar. Well, what does that mean? What did she do? Basically, what Prosser did was she took 4 English tests that she created. She wanted to assess the reliabilities of these 4 tests as to whether or not they correctly portrayed the knowledge and comprehension level of kids. She found that all the tests were reliable, and in doing this project, she was researching in the fields of both education and psychology. In 1931, Prosser moved again, this time to the University of Cincinnati. It was here that she pursued her PhD in psychology. At the university, Prosser wrote her dissertation titled Non-Academic Development of Negro Children in Mixed and Segregated Schools. And what this essentially is saying is that she looked at the difference in self-esteem and personality of African American children in mixed and segregated schools. Instead of focusing on the academics, Prosser wanted to look at how black children developed emotionally within both segregated and non-segregated schools. With the end of the experiment, Prosser actually concluded that segregation had a better impact on African American children when looking at personality and self-esteem. Some conclusions she drew from this experiment were that African American children in integrated school face social maladjustment, and what this means is basically they had trouble fitting in and being accepted by others sometimes. In addition to that, she concluded that children were less secure in their social relations. They were always anxious or nervous. Also, the African American children had less satisfactory relationships with family and teachers. Not only did children not feel accepted by their peers, they also felt that way about many of their teachers, and this even carried on home to their families as well. And of course, many of the African American children felt inferior to the white children, who were often more wealthy. She also found that in integrated schools, African American children desired to leave school earlier and weren't really focused on their academics. With the end of the experiment, Prosser earned her PhD in psychology in 1933. However, her results were met with some criticism due to the fact that she was advocating for segregation at a time when African Americans were beginning to gain more equality. In fact, Brown versus Board of Education would only take place 20 years later. Throughout this time, Prosser continued to work in education. For instance, she published 7 essays in the Mississippi Educational Journal on the subject of English. Moreover, she taught at black schools, especially helping young African American girls improve their grammar, writing skills, and vocabulary. Not only that, she also helped black students obtain funds for college. Prosser's work was so well known that she was on the cover of The Crisis, the official newspaper of the NAACP, or the National Association of the Advancement of Colored People. Though, unfortunately, nearly 1 year after obtaining her PhD in psychology, Prosser died in a car accident near the city of Shreveport, Louisiana. She was only 38 years old and had only begun her professional career in psychology. On her tombstone is engraved, "How many hopes lie buried here." That is my presentation on Inez Beverly Prosser. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed.